We're here at Jazz Live San Diego with Lisa Hilton. Welcome to Jazz Live San Diego.
I'm happy to be here.
I just want to say congratulations first off on your new release, Kaleidoscope. Fantastic new disc that's we're playing here at Jazz 88. In a recent blog post, you talked about Kaleidoscope and you said, what we are doing musically is mixing both old and new jazz elements together to create jazz that works for the 21st century. Can you tell us a little bit about how Kaleidoscope embodies that?
Well, I think most of us, let's see, a lot of times I use this analogy with Thanksgiving. I love the idea and the tradition of Thanksgiving, but that doesn't mean that I'm necessarily going to eat turkey or pumpkin pie. We can take the ideas of tradition and use them in perhaps non-traditional ways. And I think when I look around and I see kind of a brand new city, or I compare that to an older city that has a lot of character, I actually think that we want both in our lives. So to me, Kaleidoscope is, bringing our grandparents and still working with this generation. But it goes beyond that. That's what I'm doing musically, is bringing in different generations of music, because that's how we hear it today, whether it's iPod Shuffle or Jack Radio, where we mix music together. But it became more than that because I realized that it's really through the mixture of the colors in a kaleidoscope that make that work. And it's not just mixing music, it's with people as well. So in our society, in our communities, when we embrace everybody, when we embrace just all shapes, all colors, just like a kaleidoscope, that's really where the beauty is. And we're not just talking about the color of someone's skin, we're talking about old and young and those people that are fit or those people that are disabled. It's a very embracing way. So to me, Kaleidoscope works musically, but also as a philosophical standpoint too.
So you're on this disc, you feature quite a few of your own original compositions, and that's kind of been a theme of yours for your whole career is original composition. And then you throw in a couple covers, Adele's One and Only, and then the standard When I Fall in Love. Let's talk about your original compositions a little bit first. You talked about Kaleidoscope and mixing some of the elements of old and new in. Let's start with some of the elements of old. What about jazz that you've heard before excites you and that you want to bring into your music?
Okay, great, thanks. Well, I love Jelly Roll, and Jelly Roll Morton, of course, he claims that he invented jazz, of course. Great pianist, but many of us don't want to listen to just that style of music, but we appreciate it. And then I've always been a fan of Muddy Waters, and so there's always the blues that are included. Once upon a time, jazz had to include the blues. We don't so much anymore. But then with every generation, the modal style of the Miles Davis classic jazz era with Bill Evans. I like to reference Bill Evans sometimes, but then I bring it into minimalism, Steve Reich, then we could go into rock or punk with Green Day. So that's how we listen to music. In the old days, it was the local DJ or perhaps your parents' record collection that curated your music. But these days, it's just the touch of a finger on your iPod, on YouTube, and you can listen to music from everywhere. So I think that's what the 21st century music should sound like. So
do the non-originals that you picked, especially the Adele tune, do those reflect something about contemporary music that you want to bring into your music and make it your own?
Well, in this case, When I Fall in Love, and Adele's music is very romantic, so it was almost a bookend. So you had a traditional standard love song. Those songs were very romantic, and we're not as romantic as songwriters. I'm not sure about society, but as songwriters, we're not as romantic anymore. But Adele, of course, all her songs, or the majority of them, have been about love. So I thought it was a nice contrast to bookend those two.
The musicians that you played with on Kaleidoscope, are musicians that you've worked with for many years,
Yeah.
Larry Grenadier on bass, J.D. Allen on saxophone, and then Marcus Gilmore on drums on this one. You've also worked with, I think, Nasheet Waits also. How do they come into play with your original tunes? I don't know if these were compositions that were written especially for this disc and for this group, or if they were maybe tunes you'd had before. But how do they feed into your process for coming up with, especially the originals?
Well, I work as an artist, really. I compose a lot. That's my favorite part. And I try and represent what's going on in the world today, because that's what our music should. And so as the music is coming along, then I start to get a flavor of who I'm going to work with and what the album is going to be about. So maybe about 2/3 of the way through, I have the idea of the kaleidoscope and the mixture. I make a point, a la Miles Davis style. We don't rehearse. They don't see the music ahead of time. I just talk the piece down, and then we record. I don't care about just taking one take, because sometimes it puts too much pressure on people to try and do that. But I don't really believe in the rehearsal process. And when you hire artists, when you hire leaders, then when you're working with them, you would want them to express how they hear about the music. So I tell them what the music is about, what it means, what we're working on musically, and then we just record from there. Marcus was a new drummer. I was very excited to work with him. I had seen him a couple of times, and then I had the chance to meet him, and he was real nice when I met him. It's always a little nervous when you bring someone new into the studio, but apparently when he was 15, J.D. Allen gave him his first job or something. Like, they worked together when he was like 15. His mom drove him to the gig. So apparently he knew everyone, and just really a young drummer to watch. He is the grandson of the great Roy Haynes, the drummer, but really keep your ear open for Marcus Gilmore. And of course, can I talk about J.D. Allen?
Please do.
Oh my God, he's the tenor for our times. He's got that deep Detroit sound that every time we get in the studio, the engineers are so excited because it's such an incredible tone that he has. He was playing on a new sax that had been given to him, and I just think you can hear the beautiful joy in that. And then Larry Grenadier, of course, really one of our great bass players at the time, plays so much with Brad Meldau, of course, and then Pat Metheny, Chris Potter, you name it, really some great players.
And so then the artists that you're playing with tonight are local guys, and some of the cream of the crop of local, with Rob Thorson on bass and Richard Sellers on drums. How do you prepare them to interpret your music on, I would imagine, short notice, or how does that work, and what do you get out of that experience?
Well, I think always I try and communicate what we're trying to say musically and what things are about. And then, of course, tonight I enjoy describing to the audience, too, everything about my compositions. I enjoy that, too. I think they're great musicians, and you hear their ideas, and it's always, I don't know, it's exciting. It's always fun to play with different people. And I really think it's going to be, I think the audience will be really happy.
Excellent. Well, Lisa, let's just go back a little bit and talk about how you were first introduced to music, and how you knew you wanted to become a musician, a professional musician, since you've been doing this for quite a while now. How were you introduced to music as a player?
There's lots of music in the house. Just lots of violins, beginning violins and piano and vocals and stuff. I had 3 sisters, and it seems like everyone was playing music. I wanted piano lessons, and my mom said I wasn't going to practice. And I said, oh, I'll practice. And she said, well, your sister Sandy didn't practice. I'm like, yeah, but I'm going to practice. And then she said, well, your sister Sharon's not going to practice. I'm like, oh, yeah, she didn't practice at all. And my mom said if I still wanted to play by the time I was 8, then I could in fact take lessons. Well, I was 6, so I basically learned how to play the piano from the little colored keyboard guide, and red, red, blue, blue, green, green, yellow, that kind of thing. Well, that got pretty boring quickly, and so I started writing my own tunes, nothing like Mozart. And then as soon as I took lessons, I learned very quickly. So I had a nice classical background and also learned what they called modern music at the time. Now, of course, we just call it 20th century music. And then in high school, started getting into blues and jazz because it was way cooler than Mozart at the time. But I got lost, and I, in college, felt that I did not know what I should do as a musical career. So I walked away and finished my college years up as an art major, and really never played the piano again. And after many, many years, I went back. Of course, I could hardly play anymore, and that's when I realized what I needed to do was to compose. So since then, it's been 16 years and 16 CDs and, I don't know, over 100, 200 tunes on iTunes. So it's really, that's where my passion was.
It seems like another passion of yours, as you were talking about inclusiveness and bringing things in, is some of your work with the blind and others less fortunate. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do in that area?
Well, people ask about it, but I do so little. There are people involved that work with those with disabilities full-time. Those are really angels. But I do try and bring in awareness. Originally, I went to the junior blind camp near my home in Malibu, California. And then when I was at another organization for the blind, Perkins School for the Blind, in Boston, outside of Boston, which was Helen Keller's alma mater, when they heard I had played for the blind, they said, well, you have to play for us then. And I said, well, you're in Boston. But they kept asking, so I played for their school, and then Chicago Lighthouse for the Blind asked me to come play there, and then Junior Blind of America invites me back every year. What I've learned is, my whole thoughts about working with people with physical disabilities has really changed. I think that we all have difficulties. And those people with physical disabilities, we see them. But on a day-to-day basis, we're all dealing with something, whether it's an ill parent or whatever our personal financial difficulties. But when we see people with physical difficulties navigating their world well, then it's inspiring. It really is. And I enjoy it. I have had so many great experiences. And I think these days, too, going back to the kaleidoscope idea, is that being inclusive is also to be inclusive about people with disabilities. And I think physical disabilities, I think that we gain so much, not just with diversity in terms of our cultural background, but all kinds of diversity, because that's where the beauty of the kaleidoscope is, I think, and our strength, too.
Let's talk just a little bit about what you have planned for the future. You've got the disc out. Where is your next steps? What kind of challenges are you trying to work through and now in your life?
Well, Vince, one of the things I always do is that I take time out. I don't tour all year round. I always take some time where I just explore, go back to sight reading, look at composers that I'm inspired by, all the greats. I think every year I explore different composers. Maybe one year I'll all be atonal kind of things. Maybe one year it's mostly blues or something. So I work with exploration, and then as I'm doing that, then compositions and ideas and musical things start popping up. I'll think, I wonder if I can do that. I think I can. And then I'll just start trying to put pieces together. It's like I said, it's so exciting to me.
Well, where can folks find out more about you and get connected with you?
Oh, well, thanks. LisaHiltonMusic.com. The music's for sale, Amazon, CD Baby, iTunes, of course.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here at Jazz Live San Diego. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thanks, Vince. You guys have always been so supportive here at KSDS for years, and I'm really happy to be down here. I think you have a great program.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks.